It should be under like more, I think.
Yeah, there we go.
Looks
Okay.
like it's going.
All right. So we got Logan from Cursed Candle Company this month. Take it away, Logan. Oh, and if anyone has any, questions during the, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll let Logan know. So.
Yep. Or feel free to interrupt me. Honestly, it's just two of you, so I won't be overwhelmed or anything. Yeah, so I run a small local business called Cursed Candle Company. You can find me at cursedcandles.com or on social media if that's your thing. I'm basically just going to walk you through how to make a couple candles today. I have all sorts of fun goodies to show you, but I thought I would sort of lay out the basics of what you need. Did you guys happen to pick up a wick from the library this week?
I happened to see that part of the email when I was looking for the link. I also am in Kansas City, so that also doesn't help. But
sure.
No, I did not.
So Michael's and like any place like that, they
Yeah.
sell wicks if you want them. And then the easiest container to make a candle in is just a jam jar, a little ball jar. You can get them anywhere. So I dug a couple out of the back of my closet because I thought that would be the most useful thing. Typically, to melt your wax, I have these nice little pouring pitchers. You probably don't have a pouring pitcher, but you probably have like a glass measuring cup, like a tall measuring cup. That would probably work if it were big enough. You need a little kitchen scale so that you know what your wax weighs and then what your fragrance oil weighs if you want to make it fragrant. These jam jars are 8 ounces each. So you're gonna melt 8 ounces of wax to fill each jar basically. To melt the wax, you can use the microwave. It's a little harder to monitor the temperature that way. I would recommend using a little double boiler. If you got one of these guys, little steamer basket on the stove, this works great. You just get it steaming and then put your, if you have a pouring pitcher or a metal measuring cup or something like that in there, you'll honestly just a big metal glass would probably work if it would hold enough liquid. And then you get it going and you melt your wax. I have this fancy little induction hot plate here, so I can just put my aluminum pouring pitcher directly onto that, so I don't have to worry about boiling water.
Like
this is a pretty
video style. They always have
sorry?
Like cooking video, because they always have one of those little hot plates for.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
it easy.
It does make it look easy. It makes it significantly faster too. This is a really new little tool for me. I've been just using a double boiler for several years now actually, but it just takes so much longer to let you have to wait for the water to boil. Everybody knows that takes forever. So you're gonna put whatever your wax is going to melt in. You put it on your kitchen scale and you tare it so that it's at 0, just like a regular, any sort of baking, anything like that. And then you're gonna take your wax, which again, Michael sells, but there is this website called candlescience.com, and I highly recommend them for any sort of candle supplies you want to get. They're very affordable. They have little kits that you can buy that have everything included in them. It's a good website, and they have lots of learning resources too. So I've got my wax down here, and I'm gonna fill it up to 8 ounces because that's how much that little jam jar will hold.
What kind of wax are you using? Is it pellets or?
So it is, I'll show you. I use soy wax. I only use soy wax. Oh shit. God, sorry. I'm so sorry. I just dropped all my wax. I made a big, huge mess. The wax comes in shards like this, sort of.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like a big solid chunk. If it were paraffin, sometimes that comes in big solid chunks, but the shards are preferable. They melt a lot faster. Man, I'm gonna have a mess to clean up after this. So I've got 8 ounces of wax in here. We put it on our hot plate or in our double boiler and let it heat up. You'll need a candy thermometer, some sort of glass thermometer, to watch the temperature. You want it to completely melt to liquid, and you want it to get to at least 185. At 185, that's when we'll mix our fragrance oil in. So in the meantime, we'll measure out our fragrance oil. So the typical ratio is for every pound of soy wax, you put 1 ounce of fragrance oil in. So then you just do the math. If there's 8 ounces of wax, then you use ½ an ounce of fragrance oil. So let's see. Let's do a nice cashmere plum today. You can buy fragrance oil through any candle supplier. Michael's also sells it. Basically, Michael sells all these things too. But you'll get a little measuring pouring guy, tear it out, and then weigh out half or 0.5 ounces, ½ of an ounce. There you go. And we'll just set that back and wait for our wax to melt. In the meantime, you need to wick the vessel, right? Because I do this all the time, have this nifty little wick setter, and it has up to 3 bars. So I can triple wick things, I can double wick things, and I can single wick things, which is very fun. Thank you, Hazlitt. So this is my favorite toy probably, because kind of eyeballing it gets really difficult. Like in this, it's not a big deal if it's not centered, but like the wider the vessel is, the more crucial it is that it is absolutely centered. Otherwise the candle won't burn evenly and then people get upset. It's a whole thing. But so with these, this actually doesn't even fit my candle jar here, or my little jam jar here. It's too big for it, so it's not even really going to be that useful, but I thought that I would show it to you anyway. There are also many kinds of wicks, many sizes of wicks. There are paper wicks, which is what you'll use for little jam jars. They come in different circumferences, I suppose. I'm not sure, diameters, math. But the thicker it is, the wider the vessel can be, basically, to accommodate that. So this is a pretty thin one, or not thin, small, I don't know, man, math terms. So I'll just use a completely average sized paper wick for this guy. I also have
diameter.
Sorry.
Your diameter is small.
Thank you.
You'll use
Thank you. The diameter.
a small diameter of wick.
Of wick.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, my wick diameter will be small for this one. I also have these Wick stickers, which are super nifty if you're going to be making lots of candles, but hot glue works just as well. Anything like that. You do need to secure the wick to the bottom, so I do recommend using either hot glue or finding Wick stickers. Some vessels, even if you use a sticker, it just, whatever the vessel's made of, maybe it just doesn't like the sticker and it's not going to stay, then you just got to hot glue it anyway. So I always have a hot glue gun on hand for that reason. And since this guy is too big, I'm still going to use this because it helps me just hold it steady. But ta-da! Wicked. It's also convenient to have these Wick bars to hold the wick in place, and to hold it completely centered, which actually is like a really good trick. If your wick isn't centered, you can kind of use the Wick bar to like shimmy it into place. It just helps. But yeah, so there's a little bar. You can kind of make these with like safety clips or like a pencil. If the wick is soft enough, you can kind of wrap it around a pencil and like the pencil will hold it in place, depending on what kind of wick you have. I'm just gonna do the one because we're just making the one candle. I also have these fun wooden wicks that I like to play with for my large vessels. These are flat wooden wicks. I also have spiral wooden wicks that I've been using, but I just started using these flat ones and they burn significantly better. These have a little metal clip on them, otherwise they wouldn't be able to like stand up straight. And these you do have to hot glue in place, otherwise they're just gonna tip over, you know. Let's see where our, oh, you know what would really help with the hot plate is when you plug it in. That's how it works. So we're gonna plug the hot plate in and then it's gonna melt our wax actually. How about that? I've never led a candle making class, can you tell?
You are doing a-okay.
Thanks. I've done this for myself for many years. Several, I mean, you know, 5 years probably, but been doing it, sorry?
Go ahead, sorry. I thought you were done.
No. What?
Oh no, I was just gonna ask if there's particular brands or lines that you don't recommend to stay away from because they're junk.
Sure. I don't really know. I mean,
when you had bad luck with.
So I exclusively use Candle Science as my supplier for wax. They're super consistent. The brand that they recommend is called Golden Brands. They recommend their 464 blend. And that's what I use. It is a pure soy wax, so there's no beeswax in it or anything like that. I don't use animal products in anything that I create, so I only use soy wax. And then
Golden what?
Sorry? Golden Brands 464 is the blend. And Candle Science, if you're on there and you're looking at their learning stuff, they have how to make a candle, and it has the breakdown of everything you need, all that. And then they have kits, like I said, but you can, from their learning pages, you can just add everything to your cart and just buy it that way. It's really handy. And they also sell vessels, which is nice. They sell all sorts of jars and stuff, and they are expanding it. It used to just be glass jars, but they have started carrying these really nice white ceramic vessels, which are available at cursedcandles.com. They also sell these like cool mercury tumblers that I call my snowstorm vessels because when they're filled, kind of looks like a snowstorm. I only pour black soy wax. That's my brand, is black soy wax with gold highlights. So I have this black liquid dye that is quite intense and makes a huge mess if you're not careful. But it doesn't affect how it burns. It doesn't affect the fragrance or anything like that. It just makes the candle black. And then there's this powdered gold mica, like the mineral mica, that I sprinkle on there and then like blow it, and it like disperses in a really like pretty shimmer way. So gold and black is my thing. I like to add things. So here's a fun little casting candle. It has 2 smoky quartz points and a bunch of rose quartz shards, and then one of those flat wooden wicks that I showed you. This is actually a fertility intention candle. Somebody asked me to make it for them with that intention, and turns out that smoky and rose quartz are both fertility crystals. If you are into that kind of thing, you know. So our wax is melting now, which is great. That's what you want. So it melts a hell of a lot faster on this little hot pad than it will in your double boiler. It might take it a good 15 minutes to get to 185 where you want it. Again, keep that candy thermometer suspended in the liquid, but not touching the vessel that it's melting in. Otherwise, you'll know how hot the vessel is, not how hot the wax is. That's an important distinction. Let's see here. We're about halfway melted on this guy, and we're at 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Thing is heating up this space nicely. It is a good cold weather hobby, candle making. It will keep you warm. as far as the mindfulness aspect goes, I mean, it really does just, it keeps you fully engaged the whole time. You really do have to watch what you're doing. You have to make sure that your temperatures are precise. Otherwise, if it's too hot when you put the fragrance oil in, it'll just evaporate out of it. If it's too cold when you put the fragrance oil in, it just won't be as fragrant. And then the temperature at which you pour it is also very important, because if it's too cold, then it could form like pockets and like, you know, imperfections, inconsistencies, things that you don't want. Typically, it's a really good idea to also heat up the vessel that you're going to pour it into. You want it to also be warm. You don't want it to be like a drastically different temperature than the wax that's getting poured into it, or the wax could pull away from the sides and cause frosting. It's called frosting, which I don't know if you can see it. There's like a little light bit of frosting on this vessel here. It's just like a little shadow. It doesn't affect anything. It's just like a visual imperfection, which makes me crazy, but nobody else seems to mind. Particularly with the black wax, the frosting is really tricky. When you're not dyeing the wax, when it's just white, it really isn't typically an issue. Really just make sure the vessel is warm so that the wax gels with it nicely. I don't know how to put that. Oh, and I talked too long, go figure, and I let my wax get too warm, which is just fine. If it gets too warm, you just gotta wait a little longer for it to cool off. So this accidentally heated up to 225, and we wanted it at 185. So she got a little toasty there. But if it does get too warm, which is again just fine as long as you let it cool off before you put the oil in, just kind of hold it and just kind of, you know, mix it a little bit, just kind of help the heat disperse a little faster. If you keep it on something, if you keep it on something, it'll just stay warm longer. So it's also a good idea to put down a little bit of aluminum foil that you're going to pour on. It helps keep the temperature even, and it also, you know, if you accidentally splatter a little bit of wax, it'll pick up the wax, and then your surfaces and your house won't get all waxy. Some people use the tinfoil method, where they completely wrap the vessel in tinfoil before they heat it, and then before they pour the candle into it. Allegedly, this helps it just like harden at a completely even temperature. I have not tried this method yet. I probably should, and I probably will, but not yet. So if you are really wanting a perfect, beautiful piece, then you could consider wrapping it in foil, but your call. Let's see. We're cooling down nicely here. Guess I can show you a couple of the other vessels I've got over here in the meantime. Let's see. These big guys I really like a lot. These are from woodenwick.com. They're more expensive, more artisanal candle products, but I like their vessels a lot, and I like their wooden wicks. Haha. Which is where I got these that I showed you earlier. These Aura vessels hold about 16 ounces of soy wax, which is a pound. They'll burn for up to 100 hours. I mean, it's the biggest candle that I offer, and they're substantial. They really last a long time. So like I said, black and gold is my whole brand, right? So this doesn't exactly fit the brand, but I'm trying to expand my products a little bit. So I'm putting together It's a Baby gift sets. So one is sage, which is nice, and then the other is blush colored. So you get one of these Aura vessels and two of these tins that they match, and it's just a bridal, or not bridal, baby shower gift kind of thing. They also have tins in gold, which I carry. Actually, the Merck co-op carries my tins, the gold ones and the black ones. You can get them there for $15.99, I believe. And they carry 4 of my like best fragrances. Dry Gin and Cypress is like this like really perfect like outdoorsy smell. Pipe tobacco, it's very warm and like homey. I've never met a person that has smelled that smell and didn't love it. They also have cinnamon and vanilla because wintertime. And gosh, cedarwood blanc is the 4th one that they have. It's a nice like clean cedar smell. It's not too tree-y. It's a little more light than that. But those are the 4 scents that the Merc carries in those tins, and you can get those anytime. Let's check on our wax. She's still hot. Surprise, surprise. Wax tends to stay hot a lot longer than you want it to, and then all of a sudden it's dropped 20 degrees and you're like, oh no, like I'm behind a step. Which if that happens, if it cools off too much, you can always heat it up a little bit again, as long as the oil isn't in it. That's kind of the key thing. You can do pretty much whatever you want to the wax, but when you put the oil in it, it needs to be at 185. So we're at 210 now, so we're getting there. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to switch this around so I can mix this a little faster and maybe cool it down a little faster.
Logan, do you think there's a point where like if you're like me and you just forget it over and over again that like, like it'll break the wax to heat it up but it won't have too much?
You know, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like it might become quite rubbery, I assume, is what would happen to it. Like I think the texture of it might get weird. I think it would still burn just fine. It would just probably not be very pretty.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a forgiving hobby, I will say. Like you can mess it up pretty badly and recover. Particularly like I've had some issues where like when the candle hardens, the surface will have pockets or it'll be all bumpy or ripply or something. So if you have a heat gun or a blow dryer will work, as long as you hold it like a good distance away so you don't splatter wax everywhere. If you just like gently heat just that top little surface of the wax, it'll melt, like it'll smooth itself over pretty perfectly and look like it was always that way, which is, so it's a pretty forgiving hobby, I think. But discovering that tool was a big deal for me because I was like, oh man, these candles, I can't sell them, but I can. I just have to refinish them basically. All right, so we are at 185. And so now we take our fragrance oil. If you use essential oil, it will not be as strong. Fragrance oil has a binder in it that helps it bind to the soy wax. It's usually alcohol based, something like that. But fragrance oil is certainly better than essential oil for candles specifically. So you just mix this in, and when you mix it in, you do want to do this for a good minute and a half. Really like stir it in there, make sure that it you know gets well mixed is really key. Otherwise your candle might look a little oily. Sometimes that can happen. Again, if you're just using white wax, it's so much more forgiving, but because I put the black in it, any little thing is just really, really obvious. If you do want to try to use some dye, they sell blocks of dye and they sell liquid dye. I used to use blocks of dye, But with soy wax, it kind of just makes it pastel. It doesn't ever, it never reaches a rich color. Like for this liquid dye, they recommend that I use 6 drops to make this black. I actually have to use 50 drops to make this black because it just, soy wax is so opaque. It's really difficult to like get a strong color out of it. So you can use any sort of dye, but with soy wax, it will be more pastel-y, which like, you know, for like Easter or like springtime or anything like that, if you want to give little gifts, pastel candles are cute. That's a fun thing to do. But I am all black everything kind of person. If you are going to use dye, I recommend waiting for it to get down to about 160 before you mix the dye in. You want it to cool off a little bit before you put it in, but not too much. If you wait until it's too cool, it might not mix very well, that kind of thing. But if you go at it long enough, it'll probably go ahead and mix itself in. Mixing the dye in will also lower the temperature a little bit faster, which is, you know, kind of a nice thing. So I have to, since this is a 8 ounce, not 16 ounce, I will do 25 drops. So it's the 50 drops per pound. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure that's nice and secure. Mix. I don't know if there's a good way for me to show you this, but it's black. One of my very favorite candle vessels to use are mugs, because you can get them anywhere. You can get them for $1, you know, or you can get them for, like, you can get super nice ones at Phoenix Gallery if you want. I like doing this for gifts, because if you give somebody a mug, it's just a mug, but if you pour a candle into it first, isn't that so fun? You get a candle and then a mug. The Raven, well, actually they're sold out, but the Raven and Prima Taza both carry my candle mugs. So if you want a candle mug that's already made, you can find them there. I do make them and put them on my website too, but less often. If anybody's familiar with the video game Stardew Valley, there's a big update coming, which is a big deal in the video game universe. And so I got these Stardew Valley mugs, one for tea and then one for coffee. And I'm gonna pour candles into them. And then when the update is widely released, I'll throw these up on the store and see if anybody likes them. We'll see. I might just have to keep them. Oh no. So you want the wax to cool down to about 135 before you pour it. 140, 135, somewhere in there. Sometimes with different vessels, you need to pour it at a higher temperature or a lower temperature. It just really depends on the size of the vessel and what the vessel is made out of. If the vessel is metal and you put the wax in it when it's too hot, it will kind of curl away from the sides of the container, because the container will heat up too much. If it's a ceramic vessel, you get similar sort of issues if it's too cold. All of those things, if you have questions about them, you can just look it up. But glass is like a really solid, like not too tricky medium. And you can get it anywhere. You can go to Target, they have Dillon's. You can go to Dillon's and get ball jars, they're everywhere.
I would imagine also thrift stores would be the gold mine of finding.
Heck yeah, vessels.
vessel.
Absolutely. You can, yeah, I mean, man, you can, any sort of like, anything with a bowl, like you can make it into a candle. Like, man, I'm trying to think of fun things that I've made into candles, like pencil cups, mugs, like I said. But yeah, like I walk around the antique mall like used to be more frequently. But I used to go to the antique mall quite a bit, and just walk around and like assess, like, could this be a candle? Could this be a candle? I've sold a few candles that way, but I think in general people like to buy, like, I don't know, candles that they can match things to, so like they can buy multiples of, but it just depends on the person, really. All right, so our wax is at a good temperature, and I'm going to pour it now. So there's always a fill line, which is an important, because you don't want to, if you pour it all the way to the top, that's not going to be good. When you try to burn the candle, it'll make a huge mess, right? So you do want to leave a good 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, something like that, from the top of the container. These ball jars have a little fill line in them, so it's really easy to tell where you want to stop. But I'll just go ahead and, can you see me? Great. Do this guy here. Everything drips when you make candles, so just accommodate that. Make sure that surfaces are covered, all that kind of stuff. Paper towels, having paper towels in close range is probably a good idea. But the aluminum foil method does help both. It helps it harden and helps contain the mess. It is a bit wasteful depending on how much you use, but if you reuse it, you can get several uses out of it. But yeah, here we have a little jelly jar candle. Isn't that so cute? But yours would be white unless you're using any sort of dye or anything like that. But yeah, you just, after it's poured, if you have anything left over in the pitcher that melted your wax, you can either pour it into the next candle if you're making more candles, or if you're gonna clean it, I do recommend pouring it like on top of trash in your trash can, not directly on your trash bag, because it could easily melt the trash bag and that would be kind of a disaster. So I recommend pouring it on top of trash, and then because you don't want to pour a bunch of wax down your sink, and then like you can just use your kitchen sink to like spray out your container really well. Rubbing alcohol, like above 90% typically, is the best way to remove all residue. But you can run it through your dishwasher or whatever, if it's dishwasher safe, and clean it that way. So, do we have any questions?
I'm not in the chat yet, but Logan, what happens next with the candle? So you let it cool down, I guess.
You let it cure, so it's it'll harden, and if you're using dye, it typically won't be as stark as when you pour it. Once it like hardens, the color will soften a bit. It takes it a couple hours to set to become hard, but you do want to wait for it to cure. It's like soap. Like you want to wait, probably, like ideally, if you can make it, you should wait about 2 weeks before you burn a candle. At that point, it'll be the most fragrant. It'll have the best throw. That's what you refer to the amount of fragrance is the throw. So it'll have the best throw if you let it cure for a couple weeks. I can never do that. But I use enough fragrance oil that like even after like a day or two, like they're perfectly fragrant and like they burn great and all that. It's not like a necessity. It's just kind of it's what people say is 2 weeks.
Interesting. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop the recording and then we'll see if people have